This is the Ubiquiti UniFi Enterprise Fortress Gateway, or EFG for short, the most expensive Layer 3 firewall gateway that Ubiquiti makes. And it boasts some pretty impressive specs, like 25 gig connectivity, an 18-core CPU, and 16 gigabytes of RAM. But is it really worth over double the cost of a UDM Pro Max, or really provide any better performance? Let's find out. Hey there, home labbers, self-hosters, IT pros, and engineers. Rich here. Just recently, I left pfSense for UniFi. It was a tough decision, but I think the right one. In the video I made about that journey, I landed on and purchased the UDM Pro Max as a replacement for my homebrew pfSense firewall. Late last year, I had an opportunity to get my hands on an EFG at a great price, and of course, I jumped on it. Now that I have it, I thought it'd be a great time to compare these two top-end products against each other, and since I don't answer to Ubiquiti, give you my honest opinions on whether the EFG really is worth over twice the cost of a UDM Pro Max or not. Let's get to testing.
First, let's compare the features and stats of these two firewalls. First up, hardware. For CPU, the UDM Pro Max features a quad-core ARM Cortex-A57 CPU running at 2 GHz, and the EFG features a massive 18-core Marvell Cavium ThunderX2 ARM version 8.2 CPU also running at 2 GHz. For RAM, the UDM Pro Max features 8 GB of RAM, and the EFG features 16 GB of RAM. And for internal storage, the UDM Pro Max includes both an integrated 128GB SSD, a dedicated eMMC, and two 3.5-inch hot swappable drive bays for storage for running additional UniFi applications. The EFG doesn't list any specifics on storage, as it doesn't support running any UniFi apps other than the networking application. On to connectivity. The UDM Pro Max features 8 1GB RJ45 ports, one 2.5GB RJ45 port, and two 10GB SFP Plus ports. The EFG features two 2.5GB RJ45 ports, two 10GB SFP Plus ports, and two 25GB SFP28 ports. Both systems support dynamic WAN assignments to any port. For IDS IPS, the UDM Pro Max claims 5 gigabit throughput, and the EFG claims 12.5 gigabits of throughput. And for redundancy, the UDM Pro Max supports UniFi's shadow mode, gateway failover, and a DC power backup connection. The EFG also supports shadow mode, gateway failover, and includes dual hot swap PSUs. Lastly, let's talk about the UniFi application suite. The UDM Pro Max features support for UniFi Protect, Access, Talk, Connect, and of course, the network application. In contrast, the EFG only supports the network application.
To level set on these systems, the UDM Pro Max is the highest-end all-in-one gateway and controller Ubiquiti has to offer. The additional support for UniFi Protect, Access, Talk, and Connect applications, and the good throughput and plenty of connectivity make it a reasonable choice for small and medium-sized businesses looking for a platform to take advantage of all of Ubiquiti's offerings. The EFG, however, is really targeted at the enterprise with a much more powerful CPU, more RAM, and much higher throughput, and enterprise features like built-in SSL inspection and hardware redundancy. It lacks the extra application support you get with the Pro Max, which I find an interesting decision on Ubiquiti's part, as I'm sure the system could support it.
In my last video, I mentioned that I chose the UDM Pro Max because I have a 5GB internet connection and I wanted to fully use it. Fast forward to today, and I've noticed some things about that 5GB throughput rating that have me questioning whether the UDM Pro Max is actually capable of moving 5 gigabits a second through itself.
Here's the thing, I've been testing the UDM Pro Max now in production since I released that video, and I've got the receipts to prove that it can't actually do 5GB either in firewall packet filtering or inter-VLAN routing. Now that I've got the EFG as a comparison, I think this would be the best time to compare the two and shed some light on the actual realities of the throughput of these systems. Let's quickly go over how my network is built so we're all on the same page, then I'll show you a few throughput tests using the UDM Pro Max on my network, and then the same test again replacing the UDM Pro Max with the EFG.
I don't want to spend too much time on network architecture, but I do think it's important we talk about how my network is physically connected and configured. I use a network configuration commonly called a router on a stick. Yeah, sort of like that. The concept is pretty simple. The firewall for me acts as both the edge protection for the network, protecting me from the outside, and also functions to route packets between VLANs on my network. The benefit here is that I can easily use the firewall to control access north to south, meaning to and from the internet, and east to west, meaning between VLANs on my network.
This network design allows me to place traffic rules around the flow of network traffic between different VLANs. For example, I only want my IoT network to be able to access the internet, but I want to be able to reach into my IoT network from my server network from my smart home services to access those same IoT devices. passing everything through the firewall means I can create rules that control those flows exactly how I want them. So let's get to testing. Let's start with the firewall throughput out to the internet through the UDM Pro Max. I'm going to be showing you the typical examples of performance for brevity, but trust me when I say this, I did these tests repeatedly and each time got similar or the same results.
This is the live dashboard of my UDM Pro Max happily running and serving clients on my network. We're going to be using the built-in speed test functionality on the left to test throughput since this tests from the unit itself to the internet. Let's kick this off. The end result here was 3.79 gigabits download and 4.71 gigabits upload to Ubiquiti's speed test location. Those aren't bad numbers by any means, but it's not the 5 gigabit per second internet speed that I'm paying for. So let's compare that to the EFG, both fresh without clients and in replacement of the UDM Pro Max in my network serving the same clients. Here's the EFG by itself before I deployed it into my network. As you can see, there's no traffic, no clients, nothing. Just pure direct connected internet only goodness. Let's see how well it does. Wow, it definitely had no issues fully utilizing my internet connection with a download speed of 5.29 gigabits per second and an upload speed of 5.51 gigabits per second. That's the sort of numbers I'd expect to be seeing. But is this just because there aren't any clients connected? Well, let's import my configuration into the EFG from the UDM Pro Max, put the system in production, and test again. Okay, here we are with the EFG in production. You can see clients connected, throughput flowing through the firewall, and everything functional. Let's run the same throughput test again. And again, impressively high throughput coming in at 5.08 gigabits per second download and 5.41 gigabits per second upload. There's clearly a difference between these two units in how much throughput they can handle to the internet.
I want to reiterate that I ran these tests repeatedly and that the results were effectively the same every time here. Clearly, the EFG is capable of handling more throughput out to the internet than the UDM Pro Max. With the firewall throughput testing out of the way, what about inter-VLAN routing? How fast does UDM Pro Max route traffic between VLANs compared to the EFG?
We've done testing like this in the past, so this setup should look familiar to you if you've seen our previous videos. On the right is a VM in my server VLAN, and on the left is a VM in my client VLAN. To get traffic between these VMs, the router on a stick must pass the packets between the subnets. As always, we'll be using iPerf3 to do this testing. Starting on the VM on the server network, we'll type in iPerf3-S and press enter. Now, on the VM that will function as the client, we'll enter in iPerf3-C, then we'll enter in the name of the system acting as the iPerf3 server, --P5 for 5 parallel streams, and hit enter. The end result of inter-VLAN routing through the UDM Pro Max came to 3.02 gigabits a second. Considering the UDM Pro Max is connected via 10 gigabit connections, that's not great. So now let's swap in the EFG and see how well it does. Same story as last time. On the right is the system running in the server VLAN and acting as the iPerf3 server, and on the left is the system running as the iPerf3 client and connected to the client VLAN. And go. Well, those results were much better. The EFG was able to sustain a transfer rate of 5.06 gigabits a second while doing inter-VLAN routing. That's over 2 gigabits a second faster than the UDM Pro Max.
Clearly, there is a difference in performance between these two, which I'd expect considering the hardware differences and the cost between the two units. Fundamentally, it looks to me that both of these units suffer from the same thing that pfSense suffers from when it comes to routing. They're using the CPUs to handle slinging packets between networks, and that means being tied to CPU clock speeds and core counts. I'd hope that with the EFG at least that maybe Ubiquiti would have added an ASIC or dedicated silicon for tasks like routing, but it doesn't look like they did. So let's get to my final thoughts on both systems. Again, being brutally honest, let's start with the UDM Pro Max. The UDM Pro Max's ability to be your all-in-one controller for all things UniFi is really its big selling point. At $599, the cost puts it in a tier that only small or medium businesses would be willing to pay. Having dual redundant storage for video and additional SSD storage for Ubiquiti's apps makes it a solid choice for the higher end, but for home lappers with slower speed internet, you can get a UDM Pro for $379, and if you only have 1 gig internet or less, that's perfect. But I don't think the Ubiquiti is being honest when they state that the unit can handle 5 gig throughput. I've never been able to fully utilize my 5 gig internet connection, and up until I had the EFG for comparison, I thought that was because my ISP wasn't giving me my full bandwidth. Turns out they are, and the UDM Pro Max wasn't. Because that performance rating was one of the key selling points for me to buy the UDM Pro Max over, say, a UDM Pro, I'm a little pissed about that. Tossing the lackluster VLAN routing capability, and it's left me feeling a little cheated. In terms of the EFG, its price is out there, like on another planet at $1,999. Ubiquiti is clearly targeting an entirely different market segment with this device, one that I'm not entirely certain that they understand how to sell to yet, and I think that shows. Yes, it has server-class silicon in it. Yes, it has 25 gig connectivity. Yes, it's clearly able to handle much faster internet connections. And yes, it can move more bits than the UDM Pro Max overall. But its inter-VLAN routing is only incrementally better and nowhere near even 10 gigabit. It does have some enterprise-level features, like SSL inspection, which you'd only typically see in enterprise firewalls, and redundant power supplies, but outside of that, I'm not really seeing anything feature-wise that makes it enterprise-grade. That being said, let's be honest here, if you're buying either of these systems, you're probably not buying them because you want the best hardware performance possible. You're buying them because you want the UniFi user experience. And that's not nothing. That's why most of us buy into their hardware stack, because of the dashboard, the tight integration with their hardware, and that sweet, sweet single pane of glass, baby. I think the biggest takeaway from all this here is that there's more performance to be had the more money you spend on their hardware, but knowing that while you might be connected at 10 gig or 25 gig, your actual throughput will be much less than that. Thanks for watching this video, folks, and a special thank you to the fine people you see here who support us through Patreon and the YouTube membership program. If you'd like to support what we do here, consider checking those out. Join our community Discord and chat with me and other like-minded home labbers, geeks, and nerds, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.